Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media.
Today on Spotlight, student CEOs, the businesses they created and if they've made any actual money. Plus, the secret yet impactful role of the U.S. Army's special troops during World War II. And then meet the veteran behind Missouri's National Veterans Memorial, why this replica was built. But first, meet T.S. Eliot's little-known American inspiration. It's Sunday, and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
In January 2020, the literary world was abuzz as the T.S. Eliot estate finally unlocked a treasure trove of over 1,000 letters written by the renowned poet to his little-known American muse, Emily Hale. These letters, long kept from public view, sparked new discussions about Hale's influence on Eliot's work. But the central question remained, who exactly was Emily Hale? Retired journalist Sara Fitzgerald set out to answer this in her groundbreaking biography, The Silenced Muse, Emily Hale, T.S. Eliot, and the Role of a Lifetime.
A lot of scholars believe that he created her as a Beatrice to his Dante in his mind and putting her on a pedestal, which I think she sort of felt as well in terms of if you read the letters that he wrote to her at the time. I wanted to flesh out who she was as a person so it wouldn't be defined solely by her relationship with Eliot.
Drawing from those long embargoed letters and years of meticulous research, Fitzgerald paints a vivid portrait of Hale as a gifted actress, director, and educator who navigated personal trials to build a career at prominent American colleges. As Eliot's confidant, she helped shape his early ventures into playwriting, leaving a lasting mark on his artistic journey.
Going back to the theater work, you learn from the letters that she actually gave him a lot of advice when he shifted to playwriting in the 1930s. And he actually made a comment of, I want to write plays because I want to impress you. But then he kind of flipped at the end. The day the letters were open, a shock came because it turned out back in 1960, Eliot had sent a secret letter to Harvard with instructions that it be released the same day Emily Hale's letters became public. And in this, he was frankly very nasty and critical. He said, I never really loved her. It was the love of a ghost for a ghost. One of the things I wanted to do in my book was to quote from the letters as much as I could. I like for people to be able to read exactly what Eliot wrote to her and then decide.
I had a really interesting time reading your book about Emily Hale. I can't claim that I knew that much, if anything, about Emily Hale.
Your experience was kind of my own. I only found out about Emily Hale in about 2015. And I found out about her because a friend of mine, I was a member of a small women's group that met monthly, and the hostess picked the discussion topic. And she said, I had long admired this poem that T.S. Eliot wrote called Burnt Norton, and I'd like to have us read it and discuss it. And I had never, read the poem. So I did sort of what we all might do. I went to the internet, did a Google search, and up popped a Wikipedia entry. And in it explained that Burnt Norton was an abandoned manor home and gardens in the Cotswolds of England, and that Eliot had taken a walk there with a woman named Emily Hale back in the mid-1930s. Went on to explain that some scholars said that he would have married Emily Hale if he had not already been married to someone.
T.S. Eliot were here in St. Louis. He was born in St. Louis. His grandfather started Washington University, but eventually he went back east where a lot of family was. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's almost the same with Emily Hale. They were both not born in Boston where they ended up meeting.
Yeah, they were both born outside of Boston, but they came from families that were certainly linked to Boston society. They met because she was a childhood friend of Eliot's cousin. And the Eliot family used to go to Gloucester, Massachusetts in the summer and vacation together to get away from the heat of St. Louis. And
That's fair enough.
They might have met as children, but we know for sure that they met as, young or late teenagers. Eliot went east. He went to Milton Academy as preparation for going into Harvard, which most of his family members had done.
Do you hope that this goes into other areas as well? Would you like to see this as a documentary, a film, or
I'd love to see a Netflix series that would be, even if it was based on Eliot's relationships with all the women.
To find out if Fitzgerald thinks T.S. Eliot was truly in love with Emily Hale after reading all of their letters, watch the full interview at hecmedia.org.
They are the best-selling authors and all of your favorite genres. For in-depth, one-on-one interviews, go to hecmedia.org.
Sometimes the best ideas begin on a napkin.
How much did steak prices cost? Like, just how much have we spent up to now?
This is the Webster Groves High School Thrive Entrepreneurship Incubator, a class dedicated to teaching students to start and run a business.
It's fun, first of all. It's definitely a change from all the schoolwork.
I want them to find their passions. I want them to understand that failure is very much part of life, to get that grit.
Program Director Kara Seavey teaches these juniors and seniors at a site off campus not far from the high school.
They earn practical art credit for the course. It's a 3-hour block, so they start their day with me here at the Thrive location, and then they go back for real school, that's what we call it, in the afternoon. We saw a need for real life experience for our students. They come out with the book knowledge, but they don't have the authentic experience. So they're finding that here in the incubator.
Our business is the Equip Project, and what we do is we take donations of new and used sports equipment and instruments, and we donate it to kids who otherwise couldn't afford it so that they all have the opportunity to play.
STL Dry Age sells dry aged meat.
We buy steak raw, like normally just steak, and then we keep it in a temperature and humidity controlled environment. And then after a certain amount of days, it comes out dry aged, which basically just higher the quality of it, makes it a better steak.
Stickers creates custom designs.
It feels awesome. It feels like success before college.
So we are Knit Happens, and we create hand-knitted hats that benefit the St. Louis community. With each hat bought, a certain amount of our proceeds are donated to a local St. Louis organization that gives back to the people of St. Louis.
So our company is called Flythrough, and it's an app like Roundtable, which is going to provide data about drive-through wait times.
These student-run and organized businesses are real, complete with all the paperwork.
We are an LLC, and our member Quinn Dolan has dealt with all the banking, so we have a bank account now that's under our name. People don't take us seriously, like they think this isn't a real business, like they just think this is a class for high school, but really like we're starting actual businesses.
Actual businesses have to comply with actual laws, which was lesson number 1.
We had a very scary week where we invited lawyers into the incubator to share us all the horror stories that can happen from owning a business.
We've obviously never done this before, so we're learning as we go.
Being a teenage CEO isn't their favorite part of this class.
And then you get to keep all the profit and everything from it.
Making money, I think, is definitely up there, but also like just being able to do something besides school.
And just like any savvy business owner, you should never miss a chance to promote your product.
Hopefully in the future you can look for Flythrough on the App Store, and we're just trying to make everyone's lives easier.
Later on Spotlight, remembering local legend Ken Page's extraordinary life.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, President of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. The Ghost Army exhibition at the Soldiers Memorial Military Museum highlights the secretive yet impactful role of the U.S. Army's 23rd Headquarters Special Troops during World War II. This innovative unit significantly contributed to Allied victories and saved countless lives after the Normandy invasion. Soldiers Memorial Director Mark Sunlove shares how the exhibit seeks to reshape the World War II narrative by shedding light on this remarkable group.
Since 1945, nearly 80 years ago, we have shaped our collective narrative of World War II. As we gave that narrative shape, one intriguing aspect that we omitted was the story of the Ghost Army. This omission was both intentional and unintentional. Intentional because their story was highly classified until the 1990s, well after we had developed a collective narrative of World War II. Unintentional because if we had known the story of the Ghost Army immediately after the war, I am certain we would have ingrained it as part of our shared narrative. It is a shining example of our finest American qualities: creativity, technological innovation, intelligence, flexibility, sacrifice, service, and an unending drive for excellence. Soldiers Memorial Military Museum explores the story of the U.S. Army's 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a top-secret unit who waged war with inflatable tanks and vehicles, fake radio traffic, sound effects, and even phony generals. This carefully selected group of artists, engineers, professional soldiers, and draftees, armed with nothing heavier than .50 caliber machine guns, saved thousands of lives and played an important part in the Allied victory in World War II. Inflatable dummy tanks made only of fabric, fake radio transmissions, and trucks fitted with speakers to blast the recorded sounds of a division on the move. All of these came to create a unique unit, one fashioned to deceive. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops played a significant role in saving the lives of Allied powers service members following the landing at Normandy in June 1944. In essence, a theater troupe on the move, the Ghost Army had one mission: produce the illusion of Allied troop movement in every place where the Allies were not. This 1,100-man unit would create the illusion of war, and they did so with such success that it helped to secure the victory of the Allied powers in Europe. Filled with artists, the Ghost Army has many Missouri connections and at least 2 strong St. Louis connections. Bill Blass was a proud member of the Ghost Army. In his downtime in France, Blass kept busy sketching fashion designs. Following the war, Blass went on to become a world-leading fashion designer. Over 20 Blass-designed dresses and menswear are in the collections of the Missouri Historical Society. Edward Boscia was another proud member of the Ghost Army. After the war, Boscia became a noted painter and became the assistant dean of the School of Fine Arts at Washington University. You will find his art in many St. Louis museums. The Ghost Army is a history of which the more you learn, the more fascinated you are, and the more you want to learn.
Next week on History Spotlight, get in the holiday spirit with Christmas at Sticks Bear and Fuller.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
This story brought to you in partnership with Missouri Life.
We're sitting right now with the Vietnam Wall behind us, but we're not in Washington, D.C. What made you want to create a replica here in Missouri?
Well, one thing is that now the people that's in the Midwest and that never ever got a chance to go to Washington, D.C., but now they can come here, right here in the heartland. It gives me a good feeling inside because, you know, that I've helped somebody. They can come more often now to see their loved one on the wall.
What made you decide to do this?
When I was in Vietnam in 1968, during the Tet Offensive, I made a promise to myself that if I made it back to the United States alive, I had to do something to show respect and honor for my comrades. Well, I made it back to the United States, so I thought about, well, you know, what about building a memorial? One thing led to another, and, you know, it's really more than I really expected, you know.
How far have people traveled to come here?
Oh, we've had people from California, even from Washington, D.C., and I asked them, I said, well, you know, you're from Washington, D.C., why are you here? I said, you got one right there. He said, well, we've heard about this, and we just had to come and see if it was what it was supposed to be. And they got here, and they was really impressed because it's a different setting than what they got in Washington, D.C. When
you see people visit, when you come out yourself and sit and look, What is your feelings?
Well, you know, it's you know, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not. Some people can come down there and you know, walk right up to the wall and look at a name there and reflect on it, and some cannot do that. They might sit back, stand back and look. You know, of course, it's a very emotional time, but you know, at least, you know, they've got there and got to put their hand there, and you know, it's.
Do you know any names on the wall?
Yeah, I've got 2 classmates that's on that wall. So, you know, and I've got other friends that were killed over there in Vietnam that out of my company.
I think veterans, you may have to know a veteran personally, but
yeah,
it's amazing. It is.
When I went to Washington, D.C., I went and I knew the 2 guys, Daryl Littner and Gary Ernst, and I knew what panels they was on, but I didn't know what line they was on, and I thought, oh, that'll be easy for me just to go there, and I'll be able to pick them out. And I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find them, and I finally had to go get somebody with an iPhone and tell me what line they was on. But now here, I mean, I can go down there now, and those 2 that's on the wall, when I look up there, their name looks like it's about this long. You know, it just, I mean, my eyes can just go right to that place where they're at.
I thank you for spending time with us today, and I always have to thank a veteran for his service.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
To learn more or see more stories like this, head to MissouriLife.com.
Scott Burton is an artist who is best known for his sculpture that really sits at the intersection of sculpture and furniture. He also made a number of performances that explore the body language, and nonverbal communication. Burton also worked as a public artist. He curated exhibitions, and he served as an arts writer for almost 2 decades, so he had a really broad and expansive practice. Around the late 1960s, Burton began working in performance that really interrogate body language, all the kinds of things that we might express through the posture and position of our bodies. Very shortly thereafter, started working in sculpture. And what really fascinated Burton and came to be at the forefront of his practice was the idea of furniture as sculpture. And so you'll notice throughout the exhibition a lot of works that take the form of chairs, you know, settees, couches, tables. And Burton became really fascinated, you know, in the early 1970s about what makes sculpture furniture and what can make furniture sculpture. Burton often introduces these slight changes, slight shifts in their shape, in their form, and their material that make them a little bit uncanny, even though they're still usable. Around 1980, Burton had become increasingly interested in public art. He felt that public art was too much about the artist and too little about the public. And so, drawing from his experience working in what he called furniture sculpture, he began pitching and conceiving of these, what he referred to as public art environments. And so these take the shape of outdoor furniture items, you know, benches, chairs, tables, where people can kind of sit, they can relax, they can people watch, they can have their lunch, they can wait for their friends. He really felt that public art should be useful and that it should serve a purpose for its public. And another thing that really drove Burton was a deep interest in trying to pull art out of galleries and out of museums and make it accessible to everyday people. And so for him, you know, the answer was in bringing these sculptural furniture items out into parks, into the street. And so that was something that really drove him in his practice. This is the first major exhibition of Burton's work in the United States since before his death. His last major show was in 1986, so this is a great opportunity to really acquaint yourself with an artist that you may not have had the chance to encounter. Brendan Fernandez in 2 was organized as a response to the exhibition Scott Burton Shapeshift. For many years, Brendan Fernandez has been impacted and influenced by Scott Burton. And so these contemporary performances are a way to not only show Burton's legacy in the contemporary moment, but also think about both Fernandez's and Burton's work in different and unique ways.
With every stroke of the bow, every stroke of the brush, with every stroke of genius, the arts make life in St. Louis richer, not just emotionally, but also economically. In our region, the arts create $869 million a year in economic activity, supporting 12,000 jobs, generating $155 million for state and local governments, with more than 8 million annual arts-related visits. That's more than all St. Louis sporting events combined. Whether in a park, on a street, or a wall, experimental or a classic, the arts deserve our support, because the arts help support us. HEC Media is proud to be our region's home for arts, education, and culture, because in St. Louis, the arts mean business.
St. Louis native and celebrated performer Ken Page passed away on September 30th of this year at the age of 70. In 2015, we had the privilege of sitting down with him as he reflected on his extraordinary career, from his early days at the Muny to his success on Broadway and memorable roles on the silver screen.
Before he became an international star of stage and screen, actor Ken Page got his first taste of performing at a very young age, right here in St. Louis.
First grade at St. Bridget of Aaron, Catholic school, Jefferson and Carr. Every year, once a year, the kids would all the nuns would have us all prepare a program for the pastor. And I sang a wonderful little tune called "Why Do We Tip Our Hats to the Priest?" And I think I still remember it to this day. It was with, oh God, what was it? Why do we tip our hats to the priest, and why do we call him Father? He's like Christ, and how do I know? Holy orders told me so.
But Ken wasn't totally hooked until a few years later, when he was about 12 years old and saw his first show at the Muny.
My best friend's mother brought us out, and we saw Oklahoma, which the Muny is doing this season, with Robert Horton as Curly. But I remember him riding on stage on a horse, a real horse, and thinking, that's amazing. You know, we were in the free seats, and I just remembered looking at the stage, and they had this kind of cornfield that went all back into the trees and everything. And he came on stage on a real horse singing, "Oh, what a beautiful morning." And I thought, that is what I want to do.
A few years later, Ken made his own debut on the Muny stage as a member of the chorus with a small speaking role in South Pacific. And although his family was very supportive, they were also a bit concerned about his growing desire to become a professional actor.
I remember once my grandmother said to me, somewhere maybe about 3 or 4 years before I left, she asked me, when was I going to stop this and do something serious? And I remember thinking to myself at the time, then I need to get really serious about this, because this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to stop this and get serious about something else. I'm going to get serious about this.
Fortunately, she didn't have to wait too long. Just a few years later, Ken landed the role of the Cowardly Lion in The Wiz on Broadway, followed by Nicely Nicely Johnson in an all-African-American cast of Guys and Dolls. Then came Ain't Misbehavin', in a role written specifically for him, and he flew his grandmother out to New York to see him perform in it.
I picked up at the airport in a limousine, which was just the easiest way to do it. I wasn't trying to show off necessarily, but she got in the car and she said to me, she said, "Lord, boy, I didn't think I'd be in one of these till I was going to the cemetery." And I said, well, see, you never know, right? But I think that's when she in particular understood. And at the time I was living in Central Park West, and it was all very, whatever. And I think that's when she realized, I think he's okay.
Following the success of Ain't Misbehavin', Ken Page went on to star as Old Deuteronomy in the original Broadway cast and movie of Cats. Around that time, he also became the voice of Oogie Boogie, the villain in Ken Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, who sang a song composer Danny Elfman based in part on Cab Calloway's tune, St. James Infirmary.
Dun, dun, ba-bum, ba-dum. I went down to St. James Infirmary. There's a slow drag kind of feeling to it. And I thought, okay, I got that. And Cab with all of his, and all the high-low things and that. I thought, okay, I could do all that. So when I got there and they actually played the song for me, he wasn't kidding. It really was. Ba-bum, bum, 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 ba-bum, bum, bum, bum. Well.
What have we here? Santa Claus, huh? Ooh, I'm really scared.
I thought, oh, okay, got it.
Then in 1984, seemingly out of the blue, he got a call from his old friends at the Muny.
I got a call from Paul Blake, who was the artistic director at the time, producer, and he said, Ken, darling, it's Paul Blake. Would you want to do Ain't Misbehaving? You have any interest in it? People here had not seen me unless they came to New York, and my family had not seen it. We had done by that time an NBC television special, which was aired on NBC, so they'd seen that, but they hadn't seen it live. And I thought, sure, why not do it?
Since then, Ken has come back to the Muny nearly every summer, performing in more than 25 shows. An experience he says as an actor is not really much different than being on Broadway.
I've never thought of it as being different, The Muny is such a high caliber operation that you don't have any sense that it's less than something, if that, to address that. Broadway is Broadway, obviously, but I think the Muny is on such a high level of integrity about what they do that you don't feel a difference. The quality of everything is absolutely on the same par as Broadway.
It's the oldest and largest outdoor theater in the country. The Muny has been making magic for 100 years.
The seats seem to go on for miles.
When that audience claps and it's a full house, there's nothing like it.
The Muny is totally unique.
No one does 7 shows in 8 weeks. That's an insane schedule.
Every element is created here. The costumes, the scenery, the makeup, the props.
Mammoth Productions, 11 days of rehearsal, St. Louis, outdoor, summer theater. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any logical sense.
But that is precisely when and where it happens.
Big, giant, magical feast of incredible Muny magic.
Dozens of interviews tell the story of the Muny's incredible milestone.
It's ours, it's St. Louis's, it's a part of our life. It absolutely represents the best of us.
The Best of Us, 100 seasons of Muny magic.
Next week, a regenerative micro farm built from food waste, how they reuse everything. Plus, it's one of the most published cookbooks in America, why people still use it today. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.